Okay.
Anyway.
So
Nerd glasses off? Still on. Different nerd glasses.
So we ended up taking a break. So that's why there was a cut, and we're talking about nerd glasses off, and all of a sudden our drinks changed. So now he's got the whiskey screwdriver.
Delicious.
And I am drinking with Terramana tequila and a banana puree mix. Doesn't have a name. I just threw them together. So it is what it is, and it's also
Tanana.
Tanana? Is that what I said?
Well, it's tequila and banana. I was just trying to make a name for it.
Oh, it's a Tanana drink.
It's a Tanana.
Also very good. It was almost too banana-y, so I took some sips and then I added more tequila. Now it's perfect.
The solution to every problem, essentially. Add more tequila.
So it was a lengthy break, and I probably should have rewound the tape to see where we left off with.
We were talking about
trading in video game systems on my part.
I had mentioned Mutant League Football.
Mutant League Football.
That was the game that my Sega Genesis, we played a lot. Obviously, I think a lot of people's other, they were playing like Battletoads and Earthworm Jim, stuff like that.
Earthworm Jim is good. Battletoads not so much.
I played it. I found it, it was alright.
It's another one of those real fucking you want to break your controller type of games.
It reminds me of Ninja Turtles, but not as rewarding.
And I think that's a lot of the reasons why a lot of people bought it, is because now all of a sudden you got this game with like these mutated like frogs, and a lot of people thought it was going to be Ninja Turtle-esque.
Like, and you still like fighting
but
stuff, and like the same feeling of moving around the screen. It was ballpark similar, but the level design and overall mechanics were totally different. So.
I still remember the level where you're rappelling down like a shaft with a rope, and you're swinging back and forth with these enemies. Oh, fuck that level.
It was a hard game.
Yeah, but one of these days, I got the arcade version, and one of these days, since I can just coin it to death, I'm going to play that fucker. So for me, like, it got to the point where, like, I wanted every system that came out. Of course, Saturn was a big disappointment. It would have been a big disappointment. I should say it wouldn't have been that big of a disappointment if the system itself wasn't a big disappointment. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? But I had to have like pretty much everything. I think the only thing I never owned was like an Atari Jaguar. I never owned anything Atari at all.
The only Atari I ever owned, I bought at a garage sale, probably in the 90s. And the only game I really played on it was The Last Starfighter, which is not a bad game, even when I played it, but it's clearly outdated. It was not even a cartridge system, I don't think. I think it was a disc system.
Right.
So, I don't know. I never really had an Atari experience that was like deep and full, the way that other people that are older than me did, which is fine. So I think Nintendo became... You know how the iPhone made smartphones a thing?
Yeah.
There were other ones, and there are other ones. I don't have an iPhone. But it would be impossible to deny that the iPhone made smartphones a thing. And it's the same way. Nintendo made consoles a thing. Their UI was so clean and crisp. Nintendo is the Apple of consoles. They've always got new gimmicks. Everything's expensive. Everything's in-house. Limited third-party development, all these things that kind of are together. Crazy design decisions, really crisp physical design in addition to UI design.
That's a good comparison.
Which would be weird for me because I was a Nintendo guy, but I'm not an Apple guy.
That's right, I'm not an Apple guy either. I despise Apple, in fact. I have an iPod Classic only because it can hold like 10 million songs, and that's the only reason why I have it.
But it'd be asinine to not acknowledge the impact that Apple had in the early 2000s.
Right.
And in the same way, I think Nintendo, they tend to frustrate me in the same way. In that they always have to have some new gimmick with a new... Well, lately not as much, but certainly in the early 2000s they were doing... And I like the Wii, but I also like Zelda. And so you can play it. But that console, the Wii especially, was... It took a little while to find its foot, I think, other than the gimmicky part.
I think Nintendo, you could tell that they were going to start getting gimmicky with the GameCube. They made this small little box with a handle on it, saying that you could you pretty much pick this up and take it everywhere. The discs were like that big, right? In fact, here we go right here.
And totally proprietary format, by the way.
Right.
Which is, again, like an Apple thing, where they say, no, you have to do it our way, and no one else can do it.
Correct. And so I think that's when they started getting gimmicky. I mean, because by this point, you know, you had... I mean, the Nintendo 64, for what it's worth, I mean, you look back at it now, and it's like, it's very blocky, everything's very fuzzy, grainy.
I don't have as emotional an attachment to that console. I've always liked pixel art over 3D art in a lot of ways. So I really love the Super Nintendo, and I then moved past that to like the GameCube, started to do more of that again.
Right.
So the really blocky 3D, like the PlayStation 1, I never had a PlayStation 1, ever. So the guy that played every Final Fantasy couldn't, because it was only on PlayStation, and there was some ill will there, so that might be part of it.
Right. And, well, you know, and that's the thing, is I think they got gimmicky, too, because, you know, at that point, you know, you had your Dreamcast, even though it was on its way out, you know, but it was a more powerful system. And just you had...
So many things about that were great.
PlayStation. So Nintendo had to get gimmicky at that point, because what they were going to release wasn't going to be as powerful, and ever since then... what they've released has not been as powerful.
Nope, it's always been some kind of...
They were leading. And
angled approach into...
Right. So they got gimmicky with the GameCube, and they've been gimmicky really ever since. They tried the same gimmick with the Wii U, which failed. It backfired. They took the gimmick with the Wii and decided, well, let's add like a whole tablet feature to it, which...
The Switch
really doesn't work.
The Switch, which I don't have, but... will probably get, because I can see the utility of having a Switch. The Wii U I also had, but it's because I didn't have a Wii at the time. And I wanted to play the new Zelda. And I think that's what they really rely on. Is you want to play the new Zelda? Well, you better buy the new system.
Right. And see, and that's where, like, I ended up making the second mistake. So as time went on, and I wasn't somebody that actually got a PlayStation, because Sony was brand new into the gaming market. There were rumors, and of course now we all know what they are, that Sony and Nintendo were going to work on on their own Nintendo's PlayStation, pretty much, right. And it's been at the Midwest Gaming Classic, and it was just recently sold, actually, at auction a couple months ago.
Not a lot of those rolling around out there.
Right. So there was that rumor, and then they split, and Sony made their own PlayStation. And I had a friend that ended up having it, but it took me a long time before I got my own.
My Sega friend was the friend that also had the PlayStation.
The friend of mine that I'm thinking about, he only had a Sega too. He never had a Nintendo. Or a Super Nintendo, I should say. He had a Nintendo.
We were still cruising along on our Super Nintendo then.
So Sony was like, the whole thing was too new. You know, like I wasn't, like I trusted Nintendo wholeheartedly, and I still do. To the point where it doesn't matter what they release, I'm going to go out and buy it day one, pretty much. I own two Switches, by the way. I own the Lite and the OG.
I think the Lite is probably what I'll get first.
And Sega, I mean, they were already on their way out the door as far as making systems. The Dreamcast, they were stopping supporting it by around 2001, I think.
Fun fact: not giving out dev kits, terrible way to stay in business as a game developer.
That's obviously very true.
Yeah. Don't do that.
Sega had issues with that, but they also had a revolving door of executives that like didn't know what the hell they were doing, which was also their downfall. They didn't know how to promote stuff here versus how they're promoting stuff in Japan, for example, and it got to the point where they didn't know what they're doing. But I still had the Dreamcast, and I actually ended up selling the Dreamcast for a PlayStation 1 at some point with a bunch of games, because I knew that they weren't going to, develop for it anymore, and I was kind of done with the games that I had. Sonic Adventure wasn't even that good. That
was after the third Sonic, right? That was like the fifth or sixth Sonic or whatever.
you had the three. You had Sonic and Knuckles, I guess, which you could kind of consider that like a fourth, even though it's also an add-on.
Going back to the threes are the best.
Sonic CD.
Diminishing returns.
And then you had the Game Gear. So Sonic Adventure ended up being like about the seventh one, I think. Yeah. House of the Dead. I think I had that for Dreamcast and Crazy Taxi. Virtua Fighter 2, maybe. I think.
Classic ones, but
yeah, but it was
not anchors.
It was
to the platform.
Right. It was miles better than the Saturn, but Sega was just they didn't know what they're doing anymore. So, but as far as Nintendo goes, like every time they come out with something, I get it, and I was the same way. Like it took me a while to get an Xbox.
For a long, I didn't
have one of those.
Wasn't on board. I never had an Xbox One ever. It was only really when I was watching my brother play it that I was like, oh, it's pretty cool. I guess I've always been skeptical of new entrants into the console world, which is funny because I'm a PC guy, so then I'm pretty permissive generally. But new consoles, I'm always like really hesitant to get to the next one. And so, yeah, no Xbox till 360, and only then because it was really cheap at the time when I bought it. Never had a PlayStation 1 at all. Got a PlayStation 2 at one point. Because at that point, that was the system you had to have. PlayStation 2 was utterly dominant at the time that it was out.
Right.
There was just nothing competing with it, really. Like, there was Nintendo, but, like, at that point, I think a lot of people were moving on to a two-console world. You had two. You had Nintendo and whatever, some other thing. Because Nintendo didn't make enough games to keep you occupied all the time. You had the Nintendo, you'd play the 5 or 6 first-party games that they had, and then you'd get another system to play all the other things.
Right.
Right.
And so for me, it got to the point where, like, we're getting out into all this new shit. And I started having a yearning because I was giving up all my old shit for the new shit. And I'm like, well, now at this point in time, I'm like, well, I've got a job. I'm making money. I got nothing really else better to spend it on. So I'd have to say it was about 15, 16 years ago, I decided, well, I'm going to rebuy all the old consoles started from the Nintendo. And I'm going to start collecting. And back then, like, ROMs really weren't a thing either. 16 years ago, they weren't like
not easily attainable.
Right.
Certainly not hard. They were really hard to run, for sure.
Correct.
Also, yeah.
Correct. Emulation was not really that much of a thing you could do at home. So I was getting all my old games back, and I was making a big investment out of it. And I was even collecting some games that are rare now, like DuckTales 2. Like, a lot of the games that came out towards the tail end of a system's lifespan, I decided, if I can find these games, I'm going to get them and I'll hold on to them. And some of them I got. DuckTales 2. And I had never played it before, but I'm like, well, I'm collecting. I'm going to be a system and cartridge collector now, right?
Which makes going to conventions a lot more fun.
Yes.
Because there's a lot more to do.
Yes. So I started doing that. And but then I made the same mistake where I'm like, I got to have like an Xbox 360. I've got to have the PS3. I've got, and I don't have the money for the new things if I'm collecting all the old things. I'm like, I'll sell the old things all over again. And I did. And I made the second mistake, and granted, there's some things, like, now I've got, like, all the Classic Mini stuff that's been released. Anything Classic Mini that comes out, I buy it.
Which are a great deal. My sister had the Super Nintendo one, and it's just, if that thing cost twice as much, it'd still be worth it, probably.
And then it's even more worth it once you mod it with everything.
Because there's just so many excellent things on there.
The one that sucks, or I should say it sucked, was the PlayStation. I never bought it when it came out. It was $100. It had crap on it as far as I was concerned. And I'm like...
We played... Best games we played on PlayStation 1 were Resident Evil, probably.
Yep.
Final Fantasy VII, clearly.
Yep.
I don't remember a lot else, actually.
I'll tell you what game got me to actually buy my first one, after playing it at my friend's house, was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. That's what got me to go out and finally buy one.
It's a pretty great game.
Yeah.
Awesome mechanics.
Yeah.
You can see it now, those same mechanics in Goat Simulator, if you want to go find those mechanics. Terribly executed. All I have is love for you, Goat Simulator guys.
I watch a lot of videos. I've never played it, but I definitely do enjoy watching a lot of videos on Goat Simulator.
When I first saw it, it was a joke. It was a joke Kickstarter. And then they accidentally made like 20 times what they asked for. And then these guys were like, well, I guess we have to make it now.
Mm.
So they could have just not made a game. Or made... And I'm not saying it's art, necessarily, because it's all like stock images mostly, or stock models. But they did add gameplay, and my daughter played the hell out of that game.
Yeah.
And it is entertaining. It's something. They did more than they had to satisfy what they had marketed. So it's impressive that exists. That's the modern world for you right there.
Right. So basically, I waited for the PlayStation 1 Classic. I wanted to wait for a price drop. And it dropped in price pretty quickly because Sony made way too many of them and nobody freaking bought them. And then before I knew it, I woke up one day and the retailers wanted to get rid of what they had. So all of a sudden one day it was $20.
That'll do it.
And I'm like, I'm buying it. And I can mod it. You know, now I got like 100 games on there. But now you've got systems that don't emulate well. And I was hoping that Nintendo was going to come out with this N64 Mini. It was in the plans, and then they decided, no, we're going to focus on supporting the Switch and the 3DS, which is still a thing.
Will it ever not be?
Yeah, I don't know. But I bought the GameCube again because it's hard to emulate, and I went and the collection that I have for my GameCube, I only have like a dozen games or something like that. But see, the mistake I made was I had a Wii, and when I got rid of my GameCube to get the Wii was backwards compatible. You could play Wii games and GameCube games, so I got rid of my GameCube. And then when the Wii U came out, I upgraded to the Wii U,
which is backward compatible to Wii.
To the Wii, but I could not play my GameCube games anymore.
Oops.
Yeah. So then I got rid of my GameCube games and whatever. But eventually I went to like the video game stores around town or the Midwest Gaming Classic,
which is a great resource for that.
You know what? Wario World. Midwest Gaming Classic in 2018 maybe. I could not find this anywhere at a store, and on eBay people were buying this game for like $70 fucking. And at the Midwest Gaming Classic, I was walking around and one vendor had this. And I can't remember how much I paid for it, but it was a lot cheaper than I could find it on eBay. And so the guy sold it to me, and then somebody else came running back, and they were like, "You're buying it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh, but I wanted it. I just had to go get money from my mom or something like that." You know, I'm like, "Sorry."
Get your own money, I guess.
Sorry. You know, so I started collecting again for the GameCube based upon my playing experience. And you know, I'm gonna, even though like I get this nostalgic feeling for GoldenEye on the N64, I take a look at gameplay now and I'm like, God, that looks so fucking terrible.
And extremely, like, I mean, yeah, we played the hell out of that game. Me and my friends never weren't playing that. Like, we'd get home from school, immediately it was just swapping controllers, who was going to play that 4-player. And that was all we did. For like a year, it felt like.
Right.
But now looking back at it, you're like, oof. That is some rough gameplay.
Yeah, and you'd think, you know...
Frame rate drops.
The Nintendo 64, number one, there's two things, as far as emulation goes, that works against it. Number one, for some reason, there's not an emulator that's good enough yet that can emulate every one of them perfectly. Number two, that fucking controller. There's just some games you need to have that controller, GameCube controller, or N64 controller for.
Well, part of the reason that Nintendo gimmicks can be irritating is because their UI is not repeatable.
Right.
The controls are so weird on some of those games that you just can't emulate it. You need that physical thing. And
eventually there's going to come a time where there's going to be an emulator that's good enough, just like I'm sure at some point there's going to be one that's good enough for the Saturn and one for the Dreamcast, for example, other systems that are hard to emulate.
Don't get me started on how hard the Dreamcast is to emulate.
You know, and maybe somebody will have a good wireless controller, and that's fine. But in the meantime, like I'm gonna, you know, buy an N64, and I'll probably get an EverDrive cartridge, get all the ROMs on there, right? That's for preservation purposes. I used to own a lot of the games myself, so. But you know, other than that, like pretty much now, like not only do I have like the mini systems, but I have my PS4. And rumor has it the PS5 is going to be backwards compatible, so I'll be okay with getting rid of my PS4. You know?
It's,
But I still have my Wii U. I never got rid of it. You know? I'm not going to. I've learned my lesson. Whatever I buy now, if it's not backwards compatible, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. I miss games when I don't have them anymore. I don't have my Nintendo anymore, but I never really owned it. It was always spread amongst my siblings, so when any of us moved out, none of us could really take it with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the oldest, so I was always the first out, which meant it just stayed there. And by the time I got back to the house, garage sale or who knows what happened to it.
Right.
So our Nintendo was gone. Super Nintendo we did actually manage to keep. My sister is a pack rat and really nostalgic, so we ended up having some of those things still. But I brought an N64 with me to college. Played a lot of what was this, Ocarina of Time, right? My roommate in college played that Water Temple for the whole year, I think.
A fucking Water Temple, Jesus Christ.
I remember it was always every day. Is this still happening? You're still doing this? Because it was a hell of a thing.
Yeah.
And then F-Zero X, like crazy, that game. Random tracks, how fun is that? And then, but yeah, once they're gone, and there's, until recently, was no way to recover that. It was just gone.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like a nostalgia paradise in some ways right now, because you can get these things and actually, in somewhat realistic way, play them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that's where I stand now, and of course I got the cabinet here as well, which eventually I did order like a new card for the Pi, so I'm going to go from like 7,000 games to 20,000 and a whole new image. I've been having problems with the one that this company sold me, so I'm hoping that this new card I ordered is going to fix that problem because like right now such fucking Ninja Turtles and Simpsons don't work.
Yeah, that's a pretty good problem.
That's right, and those were the first two games I went for to play, and they didn't fucking work,
Off to a bad start, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. But that's where I stand now. So, the plan is, I get rid of my PS4 to get a PS5, yes. And also next in the pipeline is I'm also part of the founders for the Intellivision Amico, which I'm excited about because it's like bringing, I never owned a television. That's another one that I never owned.
I don't know if I'd say it's before my time, but it was adjacent to my time. I was busy not doing a television.
Yeah, it was definitely like instead of a television, I had a ColecoVision. And I had I should say I had a ColecoVision by default. It was actually my uncle's that when I went to my grandparents' house every weekend because that's where he lived, and even after he moved out, he left it there. I would hook it up and play it. So that's how I technically didn't have it, but I did.
My first Atari experience, I should have said more clearly, because I had an Atari later, but my grandpa had one. That was my sort of ColecoVision, or Intellivision sort of side thing, your ColecoVision thing.
Gotcha.
Was that he had one.
But I knew I had a friend that had an Intellivision, so there's kind of like a little bit of nostalgia there, even though it's very hazy. But I look at what they're doing with the Amico, and taking some of these games and breathing new life into them. Plus, what makes it interesting is it's kind of going the way of Nintendo and making it a family-friendly console, something that everybody can gather around the TV to play.
Right.
So I got mine already pre-ordered. Like I said, I was part of the founders thing. So I'm all out of ports on my TV. I'm gonna have to find some bigger switches. But that's where I stand now.
Another reason that PCs are good is that PC games, going back to a certain point, all still work.
That's true.
On the other hand, like you were saying with PS4 5 backward compatibility, PlayStations and Xboxes now are essentially the same overall hardware. They're basically AMD chips, and it's the same basic stuff. So the chipsets are the same, so the backwards compatibility is not hard to do because the architecture is the same. Whereas, who knows what they're doing with an N64?
Yeah.
And Dreamcast was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen, which worked great because it was hyper optimized, but programming for it was a nightmare.
And that's what makes it interesting because, so the Dreamcast was basically a watered down Naomi, and any kind when you get, let's say you have a Raspberry Pi, even like a 3B, right? I'm not even talking about the 4 now. I'm not talking about Odroid, but there are some, or I should say, there's most Naomi, not all, but most can run on a 3B or a 3B plus Raspberry Pi, which is interesting because they can do that if you get like something with a bunch of arcade games and you got Naomi as an option. It's basically Sega's arcade system that's more powerful than the Dreamcast, but yet Dreamcast is an issue on the 3B plus.
When not to digress too far, but at Midwest Gaming Classic one year, we were showing off RiskSystem, and one of the guys that runs it came to us and was like, "Hey, you ever think about maybe porting that to Dreamcast?" And because there's still like a pretty vibrant, relatively, like direct to Dreamcast disc market. Like people are still making new games and porting it into that system.
Right.
So I was like, well, yeah, I'm open to anything, as any indie developer usually would be. You're like, yeah, I'll do whatever you want. So I looked into it though, and like everything about that architecture was extremely weird, and not bad weird, super efficient, really, really brilliant, like bit saving everywhere, which is really good for performance, but really hard to program for. Because if you want a byte to be 8 bits and everything to fit into there, you're out of luck on the Dreamcast. You're dealing with all kinds of half things, and you got to fold them together. Like, the original Nintendo had how many buttons? A, B, so 2.
Right.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Oh, yeah, start and select. Okay, yeah, you got me there. Yeah.
So, but how many is 8? 8 is a byte.
8 is a byte.
So they could put all controller input in 1 byte.
Right.
That wasn't an accident. That was on purpose. So that kind of convenience for the developer did not really exist on Dreamcast.
Gotcha.
It's far more complicated.
I did not put that math together.
I didn't until recently, if that makes you feel better.
It doesn't, but thanks.
Okay. You know why they could only have 255 rupees? Because a byte is 256. Yeah.
You didn't hear it here first, but I did.
That was why that was the most you could have, because that was how many bytes they were giving you to store that value.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Fun stuff you learn as a computer programmer.
So let's get into that. So let's talk about Newt Industries. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it and how you got started?
So, way back at the beginning, how I always wanted to make video games. That's why I got into programming in the first place. It's always been kind of a borderline unattainable goal. Being a game programmer is a lot of the times more like being a rock star if you're a musician. You're probably going to end up being a gig musician at a bar or whatever. You're not going to be Van Halen or whatever you want to pick one. But so you go in, you go, well, back up, I can still be a programmer, and that's not a bad thing to be. But you always kind of want to make games. But I have no artistic talent, really at all. So making games gets hard because you need 2 things. You need art and programming. You need 2 things to mix together. My daughter was at a park with her grandfather. She got to playing with another girl. That girl's father got to talking to my father-in-law. That guy, we end up meeting for breakfast. He's also named Chris. Weird. Not that weird. Let's be honest. But he was like, man, I really want to make video games, but I just don't know how to program. I'm only good at art and music. And I was like, I really want to make video games, but I don't know how to do art and music. I just know how to program. And it was like, well, that seems obvious.
You go. Right.
So we got to going. We knew each other for a while, but and then we talked about stuff. We never really got anywhere. And then one time he just went, you want to make a game? Let's make a game. So we made a game. GarBinge. Which is it's a mobile game. We learned a lot about...
With an exclamation point at the end, right?
Yes.
GarBinge.
GarBinge!
GarBinge!
Man, there were a lot of iterations on what that name should be. GarBarage was one. Wow, we had so many ideas, but GarBinge was easy to write. The exclamation point is part of the non-trademark name because we don't have lawyers. But anyway, we got into that, and then we learned that mobile gaming is a nightmare hellscape. That the only way to really make money in it is to have massive, endless microtransactions and scam the people that are playing your game. Basically, we've never felt like that was a good. We personally would never do that. Mm-hmm. So even like money or not, like we're just not going to do that. That's just we like video games. So why would you make an asshole video game? You'd want to make a good one, not a fuck you video game. You want to make a fun one.
Right.
So we realized mobile wasn't the place because we thought that game was really good, and I will stand by. It's a good game. It's not like going to change the world, but it's a good game, and it should. Like if you play it, you'll like it. Everyone that played it was like, "This is fun." I don't know if they said this is my favorite thing ever, but it's fun. And then so we're like, "All right, let's get serious. We'll make a real game." He had been working on shoot 'em up for a while, which is not a genre I've ever been really good at or liked a lot, mostly because they frustrate the hell out of me.
That's you have to learn the pattern, otherwise type of a game.
And we wanted to make one that was a little bit more, we didn't want it to be a bullet hell, where you have to sit here and then you move here. We wanted you to move around. So we made a game that was like that, which pissed off everyone apparently. The shmup people and the people that don't like shmups, everyone was mad. But he had some ideas for the story. We put together a lot of demos. We brought it to MGC, which you saw it there a couple times. Mm-hmm. Came out last year, and it's all right. It did all right. I mean, hundreds of people have played this game. So in a lot of ways, it's like the culmination of a dream to make a video game that people enjoy. Well, we did that. We're still in the game, but I hid some of that.
It's all right.
I'm used to doing that.
It's okay.
I'll remember next time. But it's been a really long journey with a lot of really interesting experiences, meeting other game developers, and working through the system, figuring out how it all works, dealing with console manufacturers and their whole process, learning like which ones are fun to work for and which ones aren't fun to work for. We still aren't on any consoles, if that's any indication of how that process works. Obviously, in our unprecedented times, it's hard to get things doing anything, but
I kind of feel like, and I don't know how you promote. One of the things that I found, and because they're largely PC games, I'll probably never play them. But on Reddit, like sometimes you'll get a blurb from somebody saying like, "Oh, I'm working on my first video game," and they'll, show like a 5-second GIF. How do you say
a
it?
GIF.
I'm a GIF guy. I'm a GIF guy.
It's a graphic interchange format. GIF.
GIF.
The guy that created it disagrees, but he's still wrong.
So, well, fuck him.
You're right. How dare you?
So, they'll put like a little something on there, like 5-10 seconds or something like that, or maybe like a still photo, and people will be like, "Oh, that's great," and you get in the thread of them talking about it. You could tell that it's a small show. Maybe it's just one guy that's doing it, everything,
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, 2 years later, you'll get a post be like, "I finished my game," and then he'll post like a 2.5-minute trailer that's up on YouTube, and you're like, "Holy shit, this is the same guy from 2 years ago, and this fucking looks great," and people are like, "Oh, I want to buy this," or blah blah blah. And then what's even like, well, maybe great, maybe not so great, is when they say like, "Hey, I'm working on getting it on the Switch," or there's even if it's like an 8-bit type retro game, like there's still people publishing cartridges for the Nintendo and the Sega Genesis, for example.
And those are always options. And look, we've been approached by every type of person that wants to do these things, and there's a sunk cost to it. If you are selling a certain number of them, it's worth it for sure.
Right.
To do. But I think the amount of work that goes into even a simple port, so like Xbox is where we're porting right now, and I can guarantee it will be there soonish. But from Windows to Xbox, there is almost no port.
Mm-hmm.
Windows is Xbox. Xbox is Windows.
Right.
We have submitted to everybody. The process to submit for Xbox is not bad. The process to submit for Nintendo is very confusing, is how I put it. You don't know what's going on. You just don't know what's going on. And they are famously not super verbose with their response. So they were like, no. That was it. No other explanation. So it's hard not to get frustrated, though. Whatever you say about RiskSystem, that's a video game.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real game. It's thoughtful and designed to be a game. It has a full, complete flow. There's nothing missing from it. It doesn't have anything that it wants from you other than to play it once you have it. So that gets rejected for reasons we don't know. But if you go into the Switch store right now, you can find things that are clearly not games, or pretty much aren't.
There's stuff on there that's damn near like Japanese pornographic on there that makes no sense.
It's what started to happen with the mobile industry, and then has now infected everything, is that people found that they could basically mass produce something that's sort of like a game. And that's what you find on like a mobile store. And it can be like one company that just pumps them out, man. You just switch the graphics they use and have it a different name, and then it's the same thing, though.
Right.
And you can't know it until you download it. And then you look at their things, and they have like 4 million downloads. 4 million? 4,000 would have been very nice.
Yeah.
And I can again say, GarBinge is a game. Whatever you think about it, it's a game. A lot of these things aren't even that. They're nothing. They're stock art and like a few button pushes, but nothing really happens. So it makes you think, who knows how this works? Nobody is in charge of this, it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Nintendo is probably about as curated as it gets. I don't think that... Well, now looking at a couple other things, I think Xbox might be the most curated now. But I don't know how they're doing it because they're pretty easy to get into. On the other hand, maybe it's because they actually play your game. And I don't know that Nintendo ever did. And I'm not saying that Nintendo anything bad about them per se. I can't imagine how many submissions they're getting. So hopefully it gets better. I mean, I don't know how to fix it. I'm not the guy with the answer. I'm just saying that there's some messed up stuff going on. Because if you want good games delivered in a way that's digestible to the public, how we're doing it now in terms of indies isn't it. We're not doing that. And I'm not just saying that because we're not selling a ton of stuff. I'm saying it because we're not even the best game out there that's not selling a ton of stuff. It seems very random and unfair. Seems like some people are getting an advantage that they maybe shouldn't have. But, you know.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I spend, probably about a good, like if I'm bored one night and I'm like, oh, let me just, peruse the eShop and see if there's anything good that's maybe on sale. I'm still a physical copy type of guy, so I don't download a lot of stuff on the eShop. But just getting through some of that stuff and looking at it and looking at the content, and I'm like, why would anybody pay $5 for this? This looks like trash, and like, I don't know.
I mean, I can say this because I didn't do the art for our game, that it is good handcrafted pixel art.
It's beautiful.
It's a pretty game.
It is.
And that wasn't an accident, and it wasn't easy. It was a lot of work. And it's just very frustrating when you see games that are clearly not that have 5 million downloads, and you don't understand what's even happening at that point. Mm-hmm. But you want to believe that it'll all balance out. But I think there's a lot of forces on the way it works that are not related to quality.
Right.
I mean, there's so much like bot farming, and the big problem with like Steam Greenlight was that it was a vote-based system, and if people voted your game on, you could get onto the store, which seems logical. But if you can buy votes, then it becomes a mess.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with anything anymore. Now Steam is better. I mean, it was our most successful place to launch things. We got a lot of good feedback, but it's also really fickle. No one buys anything unless it's on sale on Steam, and that's not Steam's fault either. It's just the way that the market works on there. Most people, including me, on Steam you'll see a game you think looks good, and you'll put it on your wish list or whatever, and then you just wait.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, it'll be 75% off, and then you buy it then. Well, that's great, but not for the guy that made the game. Like, you want it to have some kind of urgency to buy it now. Nintendo has that wrapped up with their first-party stuff.
Which never drops in price.
Ever. And they don't have to.
Right.
But if I sell a game if I set the price on my game on Steam at $20, I know I'm actually selling it for $10 at the most. And that's not counting other things that come out after that. But if you can only sell it on sale, the whole price dynamic gets all messed up. Mm-hmm. It's totally distorted. I don't have the answer again for this. I don't have a better way to do it. I just know that the way it works now is not super exciting for developers that are working on really good, hard to make stuff to make money, because two guys working on a game and then selling it for $4 a copy it's not worth it. It has to be because you like it.
Yeah.
It's not for the money.
Right.
So it's not like we're done making games. We're making games. We're going to keep making games as long as we're alive, probably.
Yeah.
Will we ever make any money? Probably not. I mean, who knows? But that's not the point for us, kind of. I mean, to be able to look... I mean, I remember the release of RiskSystem last year around this time. It was just one of the bright points of my whole life. It was very exciting to release a game and have, for one brief moment, like probably a 10-minute period, we were the #1 trending game on Steam. It's an exciting thing.
Yeah.
It's a thing you dream about as a kid. You're like, games, we're making games. We really did it. We made a game.
Right.
People reviewed it. Like, it was a real thing. So, it's fun to have done. But I think it deserved a little more. I mean, it's a niche game. It is. But it's not as niche as some other games that have 10 million sales. So, I don't know.
Right.
It's hard to predict or even understand. When RiskSystem came out, and we were storing it at conventions, we went to Midwest Gaming Classic as it came out, which was a little bit before it was released there.
Right.
And then we were at Anime Central in Chicago-ish, like O'Hare. But to have people play it and like enjoy it and get it, it's just a really fun. It's a very fun way to communicate, especially when you're like me and you're not a writer and you're not a musician. You know, I know how to write code, but to have code interact with people is fun. It's just really a satisfying feeling, like having someone hear that story. You know, maybe the end result. Again, we were disappointed in our result in terms of any kind of validation from any broader world. But personally, to see at least one person play it and get it was a really exciting thing. And ultimately, video games are about communicating a challenge to someone and seeing them learn, almost. And so to be able to make that happen is so exciting. But if you want to like get rich in the indie game business, you better get on a TV show or something. I don't know. There's an element of luck that seems very arbitrary and can feel very like discouraging when it happens. Game reviewing is a weird thing. I'm not on any side of any fence on this. What I'm saying is the relationship between game makers and game reviewers is weird. That's what I'll say. It's interestingly complicated. Getting your game reviewed, you can't just make a game to do that. I don't think it's even the game reviewer's fault that that's the way it is. They also have a limited amount of time. They don't have infinity time to review every game. So you're already reviewing a game by even choosing to review it.
Right.
And that distorts the incentives used for me to find a way to get you to review it. And that can end up doing all kinds of weird stuff. Who knows? So, you know, like if I want a game reviewed, you got to aggressively get in their faces to get it to happen. Or have a compelling story. So it's frustrating and weird, but I think everywhere where a lot of people want to be in a business and can't, and there's only so many slots, that's how it always is. Hollywood's been like this for 100 years.
Yeah.
So,
is there anything else in the pipeline that you guys are working on, or any ideas you've been tossing around that you can't talk about, or?
We have at least two things that we want. One, I can say for sure, we have a distributor for RiskSystem on Switch and PS4.
Okay, cool.
That's happening.
Cool beans.
I don't know if I can even mention who they are yet, but they're out of Europe, and therefore got slowed down recently for obvious reasons.
COVID-19.
In these unprecedented times, I think we should all remember that it's people that are important. But also, beyond that, we have an RPG we've always wanted to make that we're working on.
Okay.
Which was our original discussion, and the origin of the Newt name is that one of the characters that we wanted to be part of it was the code we used to describe the character was Newt, and that's how we kind of got to where that was. We never made that game because RPGs are hard to make, and often are difficult to communicate. So you need to have some clout before you can do that. Mm-hmm. And then we have GarBinge 2, which will be for not just mobile, but will be for consoles, and will be possibly co-op multiplayer. We'll see what we're doing with that. I think we've found that recently co-op multiplayer games have risen in value. I don't think that'll be forever, but I think that I miss sitting on the couch playing games with people. And so I think maybe there's a hunger for some of that, and we can make that happen.
That might be, believe it or not, all thanks to Nintendo. That's something that they've been with the Switch that they've really been trying to push.
Their commercials are pretty moving. I don't know. I like them. I don't have one yet, but I will be getting one. So yeah, we have a lot in the pipeline. We're never going to get tired of making games. It's just a matter of having time to do it. And,
Right.
you know, that means having a day job and not doing it all the time. And don't let anyone tell you different. It's hard to make video games.
That's why I don't make them. In high school, I took one computer class, and we had to, and I'm going to butcher the hell out of this because I don't remember a lot of it. We had to build a game. That was like the big project, right?
So,
and back then, Ren and Stimpy were big. Nickelodeon. So they're like, and I was like a big Ren and Stimpy fan. So I'm like, I'm going to make a Ren and Stimpy game. And basically, the game, all it really had to be was a single animated screen. That's all it had on we were using an IBM.
in the most reductionist way, all a video game is an update loop. So if you have one animated screen, you have the basics of a game.
Right. So, and this is where it kind of goes back to when you and the other Chris kind of got together. I learned the hard way that I'm all right with the art and the music. I got the picture. I programmed the picture. I got the picture going. I got the music. I could not program that fucking thing to animate for shit. I could not get anything going on that. I got like a C because I could not do it.
Video game programming is...
And you're talking 1993, so...
Video game programming is... I mean, I do all kinds of other programming. It's my day job. It's what I do all the time. Video game programming, in a lot of ways, is the most difficult kind. Because it's real time.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have to do it in real time, it's a lot easier to do anything. But real time is hard. Not to discourage anybody. If you're a programmer, you can do it. It is hard. And it's... can be very frustrating at times. But, you know, Rovio didn't make Angry Birds till their, 20-second game. So, don't lose hope. You never know.
You only got 20 more to go.
Right? That's exactly right. Oh, we aren't far enough apart. Oh, no!
I think we'll survive.
Oh, no, we're gonna die. It's all over.
Well, we've been drinking, so it kind of kills everything.
Okay. Thank God.
And I've got a big spray bottle of pure isopropyl alcohol, like 99% sitting over there.
Is it denatured?
Is it what?
Denatured.
What the fuck does that mean?
Alcohol taxes make alcohol very expensive.
I got it for free. I don't know what.
But
my company made it.
So when they made alcohol that's not for drinking, but is for other things, they denature it, which just means they make you puke on purpose. And then they don't have to pay taxes on it for liquor.
Oh, I see.
So denatured means don't drink it, you'll throw up.
Yeah, no, you can't drink it.
And so that's on purpose, though. That's what's such a dick move. Is that it was drinkable until they put that shit in there.
I don't think it was. I don't think when my company made that, I don't think it was drinkable at any point. So, just to let you know. Now, I do have another bottle of the kind that you put on your hands upstairs. That came from a distillery. So
that's probably not denatured. That's probably ready to go.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other things that make it not super appealing.
But
what I'm really trying to get to is, are we out of alcohol?
The real alcohol that you drink?
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Then we're okay.
We'll be all right. So that about covers it. Chris, I want to thank you for joining me. COVID handshake. All right. All that.
Oh yeah, that thing.
Whatever.
What do they call it? The weenus touch? This is called a weenus. That's part of your body right here. You're learning so much.
I always called something else my weenus, but to each his own. I called that my elbow.
Right.
So that'll be it.
Should I dance?
No. Unless you want to.
Make sure you smash the like button, subscribe, share it to your friends, skywrite it, tattoo it on your arm or face. Face is good. Write a letter to your congressman. Write it in chalk in your driveway. Mow it into your lawn. God. Put it on a T-shirt. Spell it out with your bodies. Like on the grass, like make the shapes of the letters.
If you live in a wintry climate, piss it in the snow. I
Piss
guess.
it in the snow. Put on your license plate. Maybe multiple license plates, and then park next to each other.
Take a razor blade and scratch it into your arm.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a little too dark?
No, I think we're headed there.
All right, so that'll be it for this episode. Do all those things, and we'll see you next time.